Okay, recording away. I'll let someone in. So the reason I have scheduled this meeting is to explain a couple of things that have changed of late, and also importantly to provide some feedback and to tell you a little bit about some of the things that I've been doing, that we, the faculty, have been doing to try and support you. And hopefully that'll be very clear by the end of this Zoom session. What I might do to start with is do what's more difficult first. So you had an online exam recently, and you've seen by the announcements the spread of the marks, and you know your own, and there's been some brief feedback for all the answers if you've been able to access that. But I want to go through some of the questions, not all of them. I want to go through some of the questions now. Why have I selected questions? Well, I've selected questions that have proved difficult. And they're kind of among the 20 questions. There were 7 that were particularly or more difficult than others. The other 13, most people managed to get right. So it's those ones that I want to go over and hopefully be able to, by way of explaining the reasons for the appropriate answer, hopefully it will clarify some of the concepts related to that, and you'll be able to understand where you may or may not have gone wrong. So to do so, I'll share the screen here, and again I might ask someone just by way of the chat, can someone just confirm that they can see that screen, which has principles of cardiac sonography at the top? Yes, a couple of yeses. Great, thank you. So, one of the questions that proved difficult was the following question. The lateral resolution of the ultrasound machine can be improved by what? Just change something there. Increasing the width of the image, increasing the frequency, decreasing the frequency, decreasing the transmit pulse. They're the 4 possible answers. 3 distractors and 1 answer. Well, lateral resolution is related to frequency, but we want to know what can improve it. Well, as I hope you know, increasing the transducer frequency improves images. So we know that it can't be C. And then D, decreasing the transmit pulse. Well, that's related to axial resolution, really. Pulse, duration. So that one can be excluded. A, can it be A? Well, increasing the width of an image actually does not improve lateral resolution at all. It only makes it poorer. So this question, increasing frequency in short, was the answer to this question. So lateral resolution, if you want to improve that, you increase the frequency. There was another question. I don't have a graphic for this, but hopefully I'll be able to explain it. Let me just, while I'm here, just have a look and make sure that there's no one in the waiting room. Okay, Let's let someone else in. Welcome. The next question. Electronic beam focusing occurs when the machine is transmitting, compensates for the last signal dynamic range, occurs during both transmission and reception of ultrasound, or compensates for the variation in the absorption of ultrasound. Well, there's a couple of questions here that are clear distractors, and they're really related to post-processing things and gain and things like that. So one of them is it compensates for variations in the absorption of ultrasound. Well, that's really related to time gain compensation. And dynamic range settings should be adjusted here. We're talking about electronic focusing. Does it occur when the machine is transmitting? Well, it does, but as a matter of fact, the best answer is that it occurs when the machine is both transmitting and receiving. So the answer for this one, electronic focusing of the ultrasound beam, occurs when both transmitting and receiving ultrasound. C. Okay. The next question. The attenuation of ultrasound as it travels through soft tissue depends on which of the following? Ultrasound amplitude, focal setting, distance traveled, overall gain setting. Well, again, I'm sure there's a couple that you can pretty quickly see aren't related to this. Attenuation is not related to gain settings, and it's not really related to the focal point. Focus settings really, that's related to the clarity of the image. Could it be related to the ultrasound image? Perhaps, but really attenuation, and this is a really important concept. Attenuation is something that limits ultrasound, and the most important factor in that regards is depth and distance traveled. And if you didn't get that one, make a real mental note of this, because it's really important to remember. For those of you who've been imaging for a while and perhaps have been imaging, acquiring subcostal images, for example, you'll appreciate that, sometimes you just can't, see the heart because you're so far away. And that's an important limitation to ultrasound and related to attenuation. The next one. Suppose the depth of penetration is 20 centimeters when a probe is operating at 3 megahertz. If the frequency is changed to 2 megahertz, the depth of penetration will be what? Well, again, straight away, there's a couple of answers here that we can exclude. If the probe frequency is reduced, we know that the depth of penetration actually is going to be better. So we're not going to go backwards. It can't possibly be either of these two answers here, B or C. And a little bit more information from one of Rob's lectures will help us work out whether it's A or D. Depth of penetration is inversely related to frequency. Let me just do something here. So if depth is reduced, the penetration must increase. So we know that it's going to be either A or D. And then something else from Rob's lecture, you know that penetration and frequency, when multiplied together, are a constant. And based on that fact, if we use some of the information we're given in the question and make them part of this equation, we appreciate that if we're imaging at 3 megahertz and the depth of penetration, which is given in the question, is 20, we know that 3 times 20 equals 60. By substituting 30 into the equation, knowing that both sides of this must be equal, we can appreciate that by reducing the frequency to 2 megahertz, the depth of penetration is going to be 30. I know that's a more challenging one, but really there was a couple there that could be excluded. By thinking carefully, you can come up with that answer. Another question that proved a little bit more challenging was related to this image. And the question is, in the color image above, flow within the vessel is displayed as red. Which of the following statements correctly describes that which indicates, what indicates about blood flow? Well, if it's red, as you know, flow must be moving, blood flow must be within this vessel towards the probe. So C and D we can forget about. Then we need to have a little bit of a look at the angle of the vessel here. And if flow is moving from left to right, it's no longer going to be moving towards the transducer, is it? And it would need to be colored blue. So the only answer really that can be selected in this particular case, if the color coding is right, and we've got to assume that it is, and it's red, is flow towards the probe from right to left. Another question that was less well answered. The wavelength of ultrasound is which of the following? You didn't have the benefit of this example, but I've just put it on the screen here. This illustration is on the screen here to help you. So, is it related to the physical length of one cycle, the distance ultrasound travels in 1 second, the time taken for one cycle, the time between one transmit pulse and the next? Well, wavelength is not related to time. So C and D can be excluded. And moreover, B, the distance the ultrasound travels in 1 second, is another question related to time. So really, by thinking slowly, carefully about the question, there's only one answer possible. Wavelength is from one peak to one peak, or if you're looking at sort of inversely, from one maximal downward excursion to the next, it's the physical length of one cycle. That's wavelength. This M mode question proved to be a little bit difficult as well. And the question is, M mode shows what? Echo amplitude on the vertical axis and depth on the horizontal, echo amplitude converted to a spectral display, echo amplitude along a fixed line of sight, or echo amplitude at a single depth as a function of time. Well, could it be A, amplitude on the vertical axis and depth on the horizontal? Now that really is related to B here too. The only correct answer for these would be something related to spectral Doppler imaging, whereby we've got a vertical and a horizontal axis that give us amplitude information. Is it D, echo amplitude at a single depth? Well, no. That's something that can be achieved using perhaps a sample volume and Doppler imaging. Really, the only answer that you can come up with here for M mode imaging is echo amplitude along a fixed line of sight as a function of time. So if we look up here, we can see the 2D image and the cursor right down the 2D image here, which is where all the information that you can see on the display is being drawn from. Then, via that one fixed line of sight, information is displayed as a function of time here. So the horizontal display displays time, and the vertical display, that fixed line of sight at in this particular case, through the right and left ventricles of the heart. And then one last question here I wanted to just go through with you again. Compare with pulse Doppler, color Doppler. Produces more accurate velocity measurements, exposes the patient's tissue to higher exposure levels, is less able to detect slow-moving blood, or provides better temporal resolution. Well, it does produce good velocity measurements, but that's not all. Does it expose the patient's tissue to higher exposure levels? No, not compared to pulse wave. Remember, pulse Doppler uses a focused sample volume, and therefore tissue exposure or exposure to the patient is higher in pulse Doppler imaging. Does it provide better temporal resolution? Not really, but what pulse wave Doppler does, or rather what color Doppler does better than pulse wave Doppler, is display slow-moving blood. That's because the scale setting, which can be manipulated using the control settings, which I'll talk a little bit about later on, can be turned right down, and that's a really important feature within color Doppler imaging. So the answer for this particular one is C. For those who joined in a little bit late, we've gone through these. I'm recording this. I hope some of my explanations were a little bit clear and not as muddled as they kind of felt in my head there at times. Anyway, that's a little bit of feedback from the online exam. As you could see from what was displayed by the announcements, everyone passed the exam. There were some that did a little bit better than others. Hopefully that's a little bit of a learning curve, and when the next online exam comes around, you'll be a little bit more aware of how things operate. You'll be a little bit more prepared to undertake that particular exam. What I'll do next is I want to discuss with you some of the changes that need to be made in keeping with the ongoing social distancing rules that we've got to adhere to. And they affect the final exams, obviously. I can give you lots of information, or, well, some information about the final written exams and a little bit about the practical exams. So again, what I might do is talk to some slides. I'll share my screen with you. And please, if someone can use chat just to let me know that you can see that red that red slide there. Thank you. What I'd like to do is this this slide. Sorry, these slides were displayed early on last time we got together using. Thanks everyone. I can appreciate that you can see that. These slides were used last time that we had a Zoom meeting, and what I want to do is now highlight some of the changes. So I mentioned last time when we were first coming to terms with the pandemic that some things would change and some things wouldn't. And I indicated to you that the principles of cardiac sonography that which are slides that we're looking at here, would be less effective than others in particular lectures. Tutorials and practical classes. Well, we've had to have some of those via Zoom last time, wherein we discussed cardiovascular, the cardiovascular system and anatomy and ECGs. So they were delivered online. What I really want to talk to you about, though, this is actually going about it the wrong way. I'm talking about the practice of cardiac sonography here now. I'm sorry, the practice of cardiac sonography. So, as you know, the practice of cardiac sonography, the assessments for this involve 4 things: an imaging atlas, which you recently submitted, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. Written exam, practical exam, and logbook. So I want to talk to you especially about the written exam. I'll give you some details about the logbook and then tell you lastly about the practical exam. To do that, let me just go here for a moment. It's going to be easiest, I think, if I open up the learning guide for this particular unit. So the learning guide for the practice of cardiac sonography indicates that there are these assessment items, the applied project that you recently submitted, a practical exam, a written exam, and a logbook. These are going to change. There's nothing, unfortunately, that can be done about that. Obviously, the imaging project was still submitted, and I'll talk to you about that in a moment. The written exam, the way that is going to be different, if I can get to it, is normally, as described, it's a written exam, and you would come on campus and undertake that 90-minute exam, in a setting where there would be, material for you to physically write on and things like that. Well, this has to be delivered in a different way. In short, you're going to be examined electronically. It's going to be online, and the exam will be delivered via Views, so by the course website. Because it's an electronic exam, there's a couple of minor changes that are going to have to be made to the way it's delivered. So let me just try and explain what that means now. So the multiple choice questions will be in a format similar to what you are now used to, having done one online exam. They'll be similar to that. There'll be 16 multiple choice questions, and the idea is for you to choose the single best answer for each of those. There's a short answer question. There are short answer questions, and there'll be 8 of those. They will be marked as per the criteria, 2 marks. Some of the questions will ask for you to type in a response to answer that, relatively briefly, and there'll be some exemplars to help you appreciate what that means. But there'll be no opportunity to use, obviously, supporting diagrams. So the learning guide has been superseded there. What there will be at times, though, is There will be images displayed, and there'll be what's called hotspot images, and you'll be able to hover the mouse over an image and select certain parts of that image which you feel are either related to the question or not. By way of answer, they won't all be like that, but there will be some questions like that, and the long answer questions will be similar to that as well. There'll be 3 long answer questions, 6 marks for each, with a total of 18 marks. Being long answer questions, there's more sort of demanded of you for these particular questions, but the format is going to be a little bit changed, obviously, because it's online. I can't give you all the details at the moment. I might stop sharing for the minute. I can't give you all the details just yet, because literally we're building the exam right now. So by this Friday, all the content will have been completed in terms of what questions need to be asked and how those questions are going to be asked, and then the next few weeks after that will involve building that exam with the support of some IT people. So that's why I can tell you some of the details about it without perhaps telling you everything there is to know about it. What we don't know yet is the exact date. It will be somewhere in the exam period, which is in the middle of June. So the exam won't be, for example, brought forward. What it will mean is that you don't have to travel anywhere. You won't have to come on campus, but of course, you'll have to, have access, obviously, to the internet and to a computer that enables you to do this. And there'll be some more details provided to you about, the specifications in good time, so that if there's any concerns, you can make those known, and help can be given to you. So that's the practice of cardiac sonography in terms of the written exam. The practical exam, once we've finished providing all and delivering all the content to some IT people to view this Friday, we're going to think about the practical exam. At this stage, it looks as though it's going to be delayed further beyond the exam period. And the reason really for that is I know that based on the feedback that you've given is a lot of you are imaging a lot less than you expected to be. And I want to give you every opportunity to be able to pass the practical exam. Related to the practical exam is some material that I'll show you shortly that we've developed. It will be released next week, and they are demonstrations of what you would have been required to do when you came on campus in terms of imaging patients. So I'll share my screen again. Please, I don't want you to laugh too loud when you see my face and hear my voice on some of these videos, or at least the one that I'll show you. This is an early release. They're not completed yet. It's not the final product, but by Monday next week, we will have the final product already. There'll be 10 videos for you to view, and I'll stagger them over weeks 10 and 11, so that they're not delivered to you all at once, just so that it's not information overload. And you'll then have an opportunity to view them. I'll also send out a detailed email to your supervisors to let them know what's happening and to provide them with a little bit of instruction as to what might be the best way for them to help you to learn some of these imaging techniques. So look, why don't I quit with all the talk just for the moment. Now, please, again, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to just tell me or not. Now, can people just let me know? Whoops. Can people please just via chat let me know if you can see Vimeo screen there that's about to play? Yep, looks like it. Okay, great, thank you. So this is what one of the instructional videos looks like, and this is the kind of thing that you'll be receiving starting from next week. Thank you. You can all see it very good. So here we go. Okay, so I can see a couple of you saying that you can't hear anything. That's a shame. Anyway, my apologies. So, well, you can't see it, but there's an idea of some of the video that you'll be seeing. I apologize that there's no sound, no audio. Thanks for letting me know. What you can see there is that that's one is about Doppler imaging controls. We've taken some time to try and produce something that will help you and something that's of good quality. So they are videos that will be made available to you in weeks 10 and 11. So that's starting from next week. There's 10 in all, 5 videos next week, 5 videos in week 11. You should be able to hear them when you finally actually do get them, and you'll be able to laugh a little bit at some of the audio that's not entirely word perfect, but hopefully beneficial nonetheless. So I've spoken a little bit about the online exam you did, provided some feedback, practice of cardiac sonography. I'll briefly touch on now the principles of cardiac sonography, which is the unit that's been affected the least. So You've already had one assessment for that, and there's another online exam to come. It will be the same, so it will be delivered in the same way. The final written exam, the name is going to have to be changed somehow. It's going to be a final exam, but like the practice of cardiac sonography written exam, it's not going to be written. It's going to be delivered electronically. So it will be delivered on a date during the exam period, during June. Again, accessed via Views. The learning guide can be followed quite accurately in terms of the fact that there are multiple choice, short answer and long answer questions. Like the practice of cardiac sonography written exam, there won't be the opportunity, obviously, to provide diagrams. So that part of the learning guide needs to be changed, but there will be some hotspot images for you to hover over and click on, and that kind of format is what's going to be used for that particular one. Lastly, I'll talk to you a little bit about the logbook. I know I'm switching from one to the other. I hope I'm not causing too many of your heads to spin. The logbook, a little bit like the final practical exam, is going to be pushed into the distance a little bit. The final practical exam will be able to sort of dedicate more time to its the way it's going to be handled from next Monday. It looks at this stage, if the demonstration videos and some of the other correspondence we have with your clinical practice prove to be okay, the practical exams may actually be the kind of thing that you need to complete at your practice. Now, before you say too much, I know that some of you aren't at practices yet, so obviously that's a limiting factor. So we've got to be watching what happens in terms of the social distancing measures that the federal government are doing, and obviously we've got no influence about that. But because the distancing measures are going to influence clinical practice, hospitals and universities in a similar way, by the time you'll be able to come on campus again, it's probably a similar time to when you'll be able to go into your practice. Moreover, in your clinical environment, there's the opportunity to do something in an environment that you're a little bit more familiar with. And what we want to do is based on the fact that things have been so difficult, is to provide you with every opportunity to display some of the skills that you've already acquired. So there are a couple of the things that we're wanting to take into consideration. The logbook will not be due before the final practical exam, which means the logbook most probably won't be due until sometime in mid-July. So that's the information I can give to you at the moment. I know it's not everything that you need to know because it's still somewhat up in the air, but I hope that provides a little bit more clarity. I might stop talking for a moment. I've got a little bit of time to answer some questions if you've got some. I've got to Zoom again at 6 o'clock with the Year 2 students, but we've got about 15 minutes for question and answers. If you want to unmute and show your face and talk, that's okay. Or if you prefer to use chat, that's fine. I did see one question here on the chat. Will answers for all questions be posted? No. The questions for all answers won't be posted. I've gone through the answers for 7 questions there, and they were the 7 questions that were most difficult. For the questions, for the answers for questions that proved to be easier, I encourage you to refer to your to the feedback, the brief feedback that you were given via the exam. If you're still uncertain about something, please send me an email, and I will certainly try to detail things to you, privately via email. So I just don't have the time to go through all of them at the moment. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to look back again if you sort of jumped in a little bit late and you didn't see an explanation of all the the online exam questions that I gave to start with. No more questions. As I said, from next week there'll be the demonstration videos available to you. Starting next week, I will. There's another question. I'll answer that in just a moment. Thank you. There'll be, as I said, an email sent out to your supervisors to indicate to them that you've been sent this material, and I'm very happy for you to watch the material with your supervisor. This is not something that that I don't want them to be, part of. So that's next week. When more details about the specifics of the end of semester online exams are available, for example, what technology you'll need become available, I'll send them to you. If you've already done an online exam, and all of you have, and completed it successfully, you've obviously got technology that enables you to do things. So I think it's, you can probably be pretty confident that you're going to be okay. It's not going to require, the installation of any, specific special software to do it. If you can access, the view site, if you were able to do the online exam previously, and you have, be confident that you're going to be pretty well ready to take this one on. There's a question here that asks, can we expect to receive results from the Imaging Atlas? Absolutely. So in terms of when, it won't be until the end of next week. I will not mark them this week. I have to submit all the end of semester exams this week, and as you can appreciate, they've been changed a lot. So that's what I'm working on for the moment. So there's obviously 2 end of semester exams for units Principles 1 and Principles 3, and there's another one for the second year that needs to be submitted this week. Next week, I'll be able to get to those. With the Imaging Atlases, you'll be able to, you'll be given both a mark and feedback as well. So with your mark, at the same time as your mark, you'll receive feedback, and it will be given using a marking criteria document that I hope will help you to appreciate how we've gone about marking it. So that'll be at the end of next week. All right. No other questions. I know there's a bit of material there to digest. If any of that was unclear and you still need to ask questions, please send me an email. I will make this video available tomorrow. There's another question here. Does exams will be delivered at a specific date and time? Thank you, good question. So with the final exams that are going to be online, yes, there'll be a specific date and time. And that's in order to ensure that you're all doing the exam at the same time, just to ensure equity, okay? So it will mean that it's a little bit like the online exam. There'll be a time frame in which to do the exam, but the time frame will be much more narrow than the online exam, okay? It won't be a 24-hour time frame. It'll be a much smaller time frame, like 4 hours or something like that, okay? So, for example, the exam might be on, and this is not going to be the date, this is an example. if the date was the 20th of June, for example, and I don't know whether the 20th of June is going to be the day, you might be required to do the exam between the hours of 9 and 12. That is, you need to start it between 9 a.m. and midday. That, if that's the principles of cardiac sonography exam, it's a 2-hour exam. You're expected to start the 2-hour exam within that time frame. There'll be some technology that you need to accept that will be used in order just to make sure that the way you're approaching the exam, is the same as everyone else, so that you're using the resources we indicate to you are available. So that means that you're working individually. That the only thing that you take to the exam is some working out paper and some pens and a few things like that, and that you're not, using the internet to browse for questions. So that's the way that's going to be given. I hope I answered that question okay. And the other one is as well about the results. I'm sorry that earlier that there was no audio. It'll be much better when they're finally delivered to you next week. I hope they prove helpful. It's taken a fair bit of time to put those together. I hope they help you a lot. So I might finish up here, yep, this will be available next week. This will be available tomorrow. The demonstrations will be available next week. Your supervisors will get an email next week. There'll be some more lectures next week. Yeah, thank you. Olivia's just said thank you. Stay safe, everyone. It's the same. I hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for your patience. I know it's been a very difficult semester so far. Trying to keep up and provide you with things and feedback. I must say that it's provided some challenges, but I think in the long term, we're all going to be better for having these demonstration videos. There's something that we're going to be, trying to make part of every single semester from now on, and make available to you even before you come on campus for the seminars, so that when you do come on campus, you're primed, ready to learn. Yeah, hopefully that'll prove really helpful. So thanks everyone, and there'll be another Zoom in a couple of weeks' time, just when I can provide you with some more details about the practical exam. Then, in the meantime, keep watching for announcements. I'll be making those, as I always do, a couple of announcements a week. Hopefully they're clear. Everyone seems to be getting the gist of what's going on. Thanks everyone. See you all soon.